Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shamash Pada Pram Sabhu Dr. Charisha Shada Srimad Divine Grace AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki This Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Shamash Pada Pram Sabhu Dr. Charisha Shada Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaur Pramanande Haribol
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. There's some messages about video quality. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, titled Narada Muni, Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. Text number 14. Nana Rupatmano Buddhi Sferin Niva Gunan Vita Tanishtam Agat Pasyeha Kim Asad Kamabir Bhavet Nana Rupatmano Buddhi Sfer Niva Gunan Vita Tanishtam Agat Pasyeha Kim Asad Kamabir Bhavet Nana Rupatmano Buddhi Sverniva Gunan Vita Tanishtam Agatsyeha Kemasad Kamabir Bhavet. Let's repeat. Nana Rupatmano Buddhi Saverninva Gunan Vita Tanishtam Agatsayeha Kemasad Kamabir Bhavet. Nana Rupatmano Buddhi Sverniva Gunan Vita Tanishtam Agatsayeha Kemasad Kamabir Bhavet. Nana, various. Rupa, who has forms or dresses. Atmana, of the living entity. Buddhi, the intelligence. Sverini, a prostitute who freely decorates herself with different types of cloths and ornaments. Eva, like. Guna Anvita, endowed with the mode of passion and so on. Tat Nishtam, the cessation of that. Agatasya, of one who has not obtained. Iha, in this material world. Kim Asat Karmabi Bhavet. What is the use of performing temporary furtive activities? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Narada Muni had described a woman who is a professional prostitute. The Haryashvas understood the identity of this woman. Mixed with the mode of passion, the unsteady intelligence of every living entity is like a prostitute who changes dresses just to attract one's attention. If one fully engages in temporary fruitive activities, not understanding how this is taking place, what does he actually gain? Purport. A woman who has no husband declares herself independent, which means that she becomes a prostitute. A prostitute generally dresses herself in various fashions intended to attract a man's attention to the lower part of her body. Today, it has become a much advertised fashion for a woman to go almost naked, covering the lower part of her body only slightly, in order to draw the attention of a man to her private parts for sexual enjoyment. The intelligence engaged to attract a man to the lower parts of the body is the intelligence of a professional prostitute. Similarly, the intelligence of a living entity who does not turn his attention towards Krishna or the Krishna consciousness movement simply changes dresses like a prostitute. What is the benefit of such foolish intelligence? One should be intelligently conscious in such a way that he need no longer change from one body to another. Karmis change their professions at any moment, but a Krishna conscious person does not change his profession, for his only profession is to attract the attention of Krishna by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and living a very simple life without following daily changes of fashion. In our Krishna consciousness movement, fashionable persons are taught to adopt one fashion, the dress of a Vaishnav with a shaved head and tilak. They are taught to always be clean in mind, dress, and eating in order to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. What is the use of changing one's dress, sometimes wearing long hair and a long beard, and sometimes dressing otherwise? This is not good. One should not waste his time in such frivolous activities. One should always be fixed in Krishna consciousness. Take the cure of devotional service with firm determination. Om Ganataramanasya Gnanjana Shlakaya Chakshmatayana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So we are continuing with the explanation of the metaphor, I guess you could say, that Narada Muni gave the Haryashvas in order to induce them to renounce material activities. So the Haryashvas are the sons of Daksha. Daksha is, of course, a Prajapati. So it is parts of his service in the universal order to give progeny to the universe. That is to populate the universe with living entities. And as such, he had many children. I can't remember the exact number. I want to say it's something like 1,000. And he ordered them to basically, it was actually 10,000, and ordered them to propagate population as well. And then, as we're reading, Narada Muni came and he had a very different idea. Of course, Narada Muni's a renunciate. He sees all these 10,000 sons. It's like, why should they suffer in the material world, material activity anymore? So now he's inducing them by his instruction to become renunciates, as not get involved in family life, children, etc. And for our benefit, the metaphorical instruction that he gave is explained. Apparently the Haryashvas could explain it could understand it without any further explanation. I know if I just read the first few verses back where he was discussing it, I would not be able to get the purport of Narada Muni's instructions. So it is kindly explained for us. And in this verse specifically, it is explaining the position of the intelligence of the living entity in material life. So if one looks at the Sankhya system of analyzing material nature, analyzing the different, I guess, ontological categories. The subtle body is divided into different parts. Generally, the West, researchers into these sorts of things think of mind as one thing, right? It's like we have the body and we have the mind, and then some people say, most people say, oh, the mind is coming from the body. There are some researchers who say differently, that the mind is independent, but all of them just view mind as one thing and as non-different from consciousness, which is, of course, in the Vedic literatures, there is a distinction. Consciousness comes from the soul, the Atma. And then even the subtle body is composed of various parts or various substances, one could say. Just mind, intelligence, and false ego. And each of these have a different role in the activities, both subtle and gross, of the living entity. The false ego is, of course, in one sense, foundational to our existence in this world. Yeah, you could say it is foundational because it is the identities that we take on that is not our true identity. There is a true ego, as we are the servant of Krishna. But in going through material life, rotating through the material world, we take on so many other egos, so many other conceptions of I am, both on a very large scale, in that we go from body to body. So in this life, I say, I am human. But in another life, I would say, I am dog, or I am insect. So our conception of what our self is always changing. There's this pastime where Indra was cursed to have a body of a pig. He offended somebody. I can't remember all the details of the pastime. But whoever he offended cursed him to live in this way for a certain number of years. And then when the term of the curse was over, Lord Brahma came to the pig Indra and said, hey, it's time to get back to the heavenly planets. And Indra says, how am I supposed to leave my situation? I have my pig job, I have my pig wife, I have my pig children. How can you expect me to just abandon them, even when being offered heavenly planets? Likewise, even within one body, I'm forgetting for a moment the transference of one body to another. Even in this one body, we change our false ego. from one situation to the next. Now we have these ideas of changing identities, even just on the physical level. When I was a child, I dealt with childish things, as the good book says. But now that I'm not a child, we leave childish things behind. Because the mentality is different, right? The identity is different. And we all go through changes in our life. So when I was younger, from my family, I identified as Jewish because that was the type of family that I came from. And now I no longer identify as that. I identify as a Hare Krishna. So the ego is changing. And just like is shown in the example of the pig Indra, based on our false ego, the intelligence comes. Because the function of the intelligence is to discriminate between good situations, good things, bad things, etc. But such a discrimination has to have some assumptions as its base. Those assumptions come from the false ego, from our identity of ourself. Things that are favorable in one situation in life, or for one sort of person, is unfavorable for another. There's the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? Because everybody's intelligence works in different ways based on their identity and their self-identification. Now, one who, just going back to my personal example, when I was, much younger and trying to practice Judaism very strictly, this would be a very unfavorable situation because very strict Jews don't use electricity on the Sabbath, right? But now that I have a different identity, this is a very favorable situation, right? Because I'm in Bhagavatam class, surrounded by very wonderful devotees. So the intelligence is applied differently. And then, of course, then the mind comes, which is thinking, feeling, and willing based on those discriminations of that, I just think this is good, or that I decided with my intelligence that this is a good situation. So then my thinking, feeling, and my will go towards what I consider to be a good situation and away from a bad situation. So then the question becomes, what is the quality of our intelligence, which is really what this verse is talking about. There's, of course, analysis in the different modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, which is, of course, everywhere in the Vedic worldview, Sankhya, especially. And the mode of passion, which is what this verse is specifically talking about, is credited with making the intelligence unsteady. They're always kind of jumping from one thing to the next. And one can see many examples of this in kind of just our life that we see around modern society, because actually the kind of this current societal system is, and specifically the economic system, is made to exacerbate the mode of passion in our intelligence. We, of course, our economic system is very capitalistic. Of course, Krishna's economic system, Varnashram, does include capitalistic elements as well as communistic and everything. But the current economic model requires dissatisfaction to be there, right? Because satisfied people tend not to buy so much, right? If one is just satisfied with very simple living, so I have very nice food, I just hang out with my friends or play music or something in the evening and don't, and not really, just have a healthy lifestyle, things like that. It's very hard to get them to buy anything. And, God forbid that they figure out that you can actually grow food, right? Yeah. I one time saw a post on the internet claiming, an infinite food hack, right? There's this whole idea of like life hacks, right? Things to make your life better. And it's like, you go get it, the hack was that you go get a tomato from the store, right? And then you go and get some dirt and you get a big pot and you fill it up with dirt. And then, a couple inches down, you just slice a tomato and put it in, right? And then a lot of people are commenting, it's like, did somebody just act like discovering gardening is like, this big life hack? But it's, true that, people who live a very simple life don't need so many things, right? And thus kind of the global economic system wouldn't be able to function as it is now if people were not influenced by the mode of passion. Because the mode of passion is always dissatisfied. That's kind of its whole thing. That's always going from one thing to the next. And of course, there will always be different people in the mode of passion. And the Vedic system also recognizes that. If one, kind of looks, I mentioned the Von Ashram system earlier. It's sometimes said, of course, everybody has a mix of all modes of nature, but generally Brahmanas are supposed to be more in the mode of goodness, Kshatriyas in the mode of passion, Vaishyas in mixed passion and ignorance, and Shudras in the mode of ignorance. So the kind of more expansive one, Varnas, kind of the people in charge of governance and economic activity, have more contact with the mode of passion. But the issue comes when those whose intelligence is supposed to be more pure, are more in the mode of goodness, becomes agitated by the mode of passion. We were talking about lunch over lunch the other day about academia, and I was just giving my observations that many people who go into academia, they go in with kind of as you could say, the right intentions. They want to, discover the truth about the world, do good research, hopefully, help society, things like that. And they're doing the best that they go into academia because that's the best they can do without knowledge of Krishna. But once they are there, because of the way that the academic world, the incentive structure is set up, they just become overtaken by the mode of passion. Because then it becomes all about grant money and prestige and who's on the tenure track versus not tenure track. And you have 5 years. At a lot of universities, you're hired for a tenure track position, which is very difficult these days. You have something like 5 years to prove yourself. And you just try to publish as much as you can for 5 years. And then you get, hopefully, tenure, which means that it's very, very difficult to fire you. And the thing is, a lot of times in academia, because of the way that things work, it doesn't actually matter if what you published is good or not, right? All that matters is the number of times your name appears as an author in a published paper, right? Most published scientific papers, academic papers in general, are read by 0 people other than the reviewers, right? So it's just kind of publishing for publishing's sake, and that when tenure committees or hiring committees look at it, it's like, oh, you have 15 publications or something, and they say, okay, you're a very good person, and we'll hire you or keep you on, or things like that. This has actually gotten, this actually leads to the very opposite of what people originally wanted. So, like I was saying, people originally want to, actually look for the truth and get some understanding of reality. But because of the influence of the mode of passion in this way, it actually sometimes leads to people really just cheating or straight up lying. There's actually a bit of a scandal going on. I think it's the photovoltaic community or something like that, some material science sort of thing, where a lot of the results and actually like the diagrams and the pictures and things and certain groups are actually just more or less faked. Because nobody's actually like going back and redoing the experiments. You can publish whatever you want. And as long as it looks good, we'll be like, oh, okay. So this one researcher, whose name I forgot, actually noticed that in several papers by the same group, in one of the diagrams of the material they were studying, or one of the photos, basically, that it's the same picture again and again and again. So they aren't actually like redoing any more experiments. They're just using the same picture and saying that they're doing more experiments. And there are other examples of things like that. It was kind of surprising because it hit the physics community. But things like that actually happen, all the time in things like biology, and especially the social sciences like sociology and psychology. The reproducibility crisis has been going on for a while, partially because reproducing old results doesn't really help you in all these metrics that help get you tenure or jobs or things like that. So nobody does them, right? You can't publish a paper saying I'm the second person to do something because nobody cares. And so, yeah, it's actually a big problem in the scientific world in general, which is also why when somebody says, oh, well, science says so and so, you might want to be a bit skeptical of their claims. Of course, not out of hand rejecting, but not treating it as Shastra, let's say. So yeah, and I've just been talking about academia because that's what I have personal experience with. But one can see in um, all fields of life really today about uh, about how an unsteady intelligence makes one shift from one situation to another. Prabhupada terms it following the daily changes of fashion. Uh, from my understanding, the world of like fashion itself, not just using fashion as kind of a general term, but actually, clothes and things is, very much like this. I never really got into fashion so much, as you might be able to tell. But yeah, from my understanding, that is, a very good example of like things are always changing for very little reason. Um, a winter coat that kept me warm last season, last winter will keep me warm this winter as well, unless it's like broken or torn or something. Uh, but you have to change. Certain things are in, certain things are out. Yeah, and in basically every field of interest, certain things are in vogue and are very people find very interesting to work on uh, or to do, and then all of a sudden they fall out of fashion for seemingly no reason. And the only reason is because of the mode of passion. The mode of passion can't stay fixed. It's always moving from one thing to the other. And Prabhupada implores us to have transcendental intelligence, which is what reading his books and chanting Hare Krishna is supposed to impart, to be able to use this discriminating capacity in a way that gives us the ultimate benefit in discriminating what is favorable for devotional service and what is unfavorable for devotional service. And if one cannot or if one is not at the level of having totally transcendental intelligence, at least try to come to the mode of goodness. Where one can live, a simple and happy life in the material world, at the very least, which is a good starting platform for reaching into the transcendental side of things, and will make one's life a lot simpler to living with intelligence in the mode of passion, and far, far more simpler than intelligence in the mode of ignorance, which is when things really get kind of insane. So we should take shelter of this process. We should very seriously chant Hare Krishna with attention, read Prabhupada's books, hear from senior devotees, hear from all devotees, and try to purify our intelligence in order to practice devotional service more. So we have about 15 minutes of discussion. Dean Polika.
Thank you.
Yes.
I really like 2 points about satisfaction and intelligence, and then you're just talking about the mode of goodness. So I'm wondering, maybe you kind of answered with the mode of goodness point, but how we can practice satisfaction, because some, some people or some devotees might look, I guess, more simple or satisfied in one area, or like externally, oh, they can just eat rice and boiled vegetables all day, like they must be so advanced or something like that. But maybe in another area where like they need a lot of emotional reciprocation, or they need a lot of clothes or whatever like that. So I'm just wondering, in whatever area of our life we might want to just be more satisfied and more simplified, how does one go about that?
So I guess my advice, so the question for those who didn't hear is basically that we find that people sometimes, satisfied in one area, are able to be easily satisfied in one area, but not necessarily in the others. And if we are interested in increasing our simplicity or satisfaction in one area, how to do that. I guess my general thing would be that all the modes of nature tend to, I guess, increase themselves in a certain sense. And that if one starts to add, the mode of passion in one's life, that tends to seep into other areas of the life as well. Same thing with the mode of ignorance and the mode of goodness. So generally trying to be in mode of goodness, you might as well start with whatever areas are easiest for you to do that in. And will help in general. And then also kind of, one is kind of what I was saying is, reading as Prabhupada's books, or more, I guess, mode of goodness literatures in general. And that gaining an understanding that even if one does attain these things, then one won't necessarily be satisfied. There are certain things, and if one kind of introspects, using whatever kind of methods that one uses, whether that's psychology or astrology or whatever, there are certain things that we're very, very hankering for, but actually will never satisfy us, no matter how much we get of it. And if we kind of recognize that, then it won't necessarily be easy to kind of give up that. But, one can see using one's intelligence, like, oh, no matter how much I get of this, I'll never be satisfied. Then, like, one can see, okay, I need to actually either swiftly or gradually give up the hankering for this thing. And I guess a lot of it also depends on the specific thing and the specific person as well. So I was saying, for some things, like, we'll get and get and get, and no matter how much we get of it, we won't be satisfied. And with other things, we will try to get that thing, but and if we are actually trying to apply our intelligence, we will understand or experience actually that the process of getting that thing was so intense and had so many miseries with it that it wasn't worth it, right? I hear this applied a lot of times to the process of marriage, and that we tend to desire the things that come with spouse, children, house, family, property, etc. But if one is prosecuting that in an actually civilized way, one will eventually realize like better just to surrender to Krishna. And some people are able to get that, very just by, hearing about it. We have many examples in our movement of Naishtaka brahmacharis who never married because they, just heard from Prabhupada's books and their own observations, like it's not worth it. Then there's less intelligent people like myself who will have to suffer the miseries to be able to get it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I've never gone up listed satisfaction. So, and just one quick follow-up, whenever you're talking about using, yeah, like we have the spiritual intelligence for reading complex books, and then also we can adopt like secondary measures like astrology, psychology, this and that. Can you give an example of how one would use astrology to then, yeah, I guess you're saying like realize that, oh, even if I endeavor for this, I won't be satisfied.
Yeah, so Paulika is asking a follow-up question, as I mentioned astrology. A lot of what astrology deals with actually is kind of the mentalities that we come in to our present body with. And it's actually said that in certain houses, right? I won't get too much into detail because if you want, we can talk later. But certain like combinations, for example, give one the ability to like gain and gain and gain a certain thing, right? Whether it's wealth, prestige, depending on what the planet and what sign and everything's like that. But also show that the mentality is such that is that the mentality is such that no matter how much you gain of it, you won't be satisfied with it. Generally, kind of bringing in the more, I guess, modern psychological viewpoint. So because what you're actually trying to gain with that isn't what it actually is, right? So you might, be trying to gain position or prestige, but you're using prestige as a proxy for something else, right? And kind of like my viewpoint on things like astrology and stuff like that is that it shows our indications of the mentalities or the anarthas that we have to give up, like things like that. To kind of say like, hey, you should look at this area more to actually help give up the unwanted things in the heart and actually advance. It kind of shows our problem areas. To me, that's more important than saying like, oh, at this age you'll get married, this is how much money you'll make. And because once you start chanting Hare Krishna, all that stuff changes anyway, right? And it still kind of applies because Krishna does take your karma into account, but it's a special mix. And our karma was mercifully taken by our spiritual master anyway, took on that's what happens at the time of initiation. So yeah, that's kind of like, in my viewpoint, at least, the benefit of going to an astrologer. It's like, here's kind of what might be blind spots, and here's like kind of where the mentality, where you should apply your intelligence and where not. So hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, if you want more information, like more detail on things, we can talk later when time isn't. And also this is a Bhagavatam class, not astrology class. So, okay. All right, any comments, questions from our in-person?
Acquiring knowledge for the sake of getting knowledge, and this one around scripture, learning versus trying to develop your relationship with them.
Yeah. So the question is about knowledge for the sake of knowledge versus hearing to develop our relationship with Krishna when it comes to Shastra specifically, right? So yeah, if we read in the third canto, Lord Kapila instructions, there's different ways of prosecuting devotional service. So actually, devotional service can be prosecuted in the modes of nature, right? So there's actually devotional service in the mode of ignorance, passion, goodness, and then transcendental. And then, of course, so there's, it's described there that, you have kind of the overarching mode and then the sub mode and then the 9 processes. So there's 81 varieties at that level of analysis of devotional service. And hearing just for knowledge, kind of this kind of jnani-like approach. It's not necessarily bad per se, in any way that you're interacting with Prabhupada's books in a somewhat favorable way is good. Even if you're like, just kind of skimming things and not really reading, it's not as good as like deeply reading, but we're talking about relative goodness here, right? Our relative benefit. So this kind of jnani way of looking at Shastra is kind of the more mode of goodness approach. There might be some mode of passion in there, because generally, I won't say generally, I'll say I find in myself that sometimes when I take that approach to Shastra, some of it is also wanting, prestige and like being perceived as a very learned sort of person. And the so but reading to develop a relationship with Krishna is on the transcendental level, right? I'm just reading because Guru and Krishna want me to read these books, and I get to hear more about Krishna and the devotees while doing it. So yeah, reading for development with the relationship with Krishna is definitely the higher platform. But of course, we have to approach Bhagavatam and the practice of devotional service based on where we are at the current place, right? And one can apply one's own nature to devotional service based on one's own conditioning, right? And go for that kind of the karma yoga approach, right? Because actually, actual bhakti yoga is a very high platform, doing everything just for the service of Krishna. Most people can maybe get to karma yoga, where we do activities that are favorable for us, for our own constitution, and offer the results to Krishna. So if one is, very attached to reading in a kind of more analytical and kind of jnani-like way, maybe one can give classes and write and things like that, and apply that way of reading to to Bhagavatam and to preaching. And then eventually, if one is practicing correctly and wants to, one will break through that and reach the stage of bhakti yoga above karma yoga. So it is 8 o'clock. Maybe that our time has come to an end. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.